Today we're honored. We're so excited to talk about Rare Disease Day. So talk about how we can be our best advocate and how we can help. And we're honored to have people talking about this who really do are going to help us tell us what's going on and how we can help. Um, we have these are national speakers. So first of all, we have Carolyn Sheridan, who's an MPH. Carolyn has a big job and has been involved with public policy on a state level for years and years. She's the Associate Director of State Policy with NORD, the National Associate Organization for Rare Disorders. And we also have Jake Saltonstall. Jake is the Community Engagement Manager for NORD. So, and also with us from NORD today, we have Allie Ward. Allie is one of NORD's senior leaders who is the Director of Membership. Then we're going on to our summary and, of course, looking ahead for future meetings. So why does Rare Disease Day matter? Um, and we're all here living with Rare Disease Day. First of all, Rare Disease Day this year and every year is February 28th. It highlights the needs of 30 million Americans with rare disease. For some of you, state governments shape insurance access, out-of-pocket costs, care pathways, and so much more. RDACs, that some of you don't know, rare disease advocacy committees, give rare disease, people like us, communities, a formal voice in state policies. Advocacy at the state level, and you're going to hear this from Carolyn and Jake, moves fast. Whoops. Moves faster and impacts daily life. Today's session will give a clear, actionable way for all of us to get involved. Carolyn Sheridan, I'm honored to have you here. Um, as the Associate Director of State Policy for NORD. Why she's here today and why we asked her is to explain state policy, how it directly affects rare disease communities, to show why state level advocacy is essential, like diseases like IBM and other myositis diseases. Carolyn leads state policy strategy across 50 states, monitoring legislation on insurance access, costs, and numerous other issues, supporting and strengthening RDACs, drafting testimony letters, public comments, guiding NORD and their other 350 member organizations, plus coordinating with federal policy teams. Along with Carolyn today, we're honored to have Jake Saltonstall. Jake is the Community Engagement Manager at NORD. He's here today to outline some practical steps that we can take now to show how to stay engaged for rare disease today and beyond. So what he's going to focus on is supporting grassroots engagement, community action, providing tools, talking points, and resources, and helping individuals connect with legislators, strengthening Rare Disease Day participation, working with advocates, families, and our care partners. So with that, whoops, I am going to turn it over to Carolyn and Jake. Um,
This meeting is
Carolyn,
being recorded.
okay. Carolyn, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you have it. How's that?
That's awesome. Okay. I'm gonna get my screen share set up quickly. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be with you. Thanks for having me with you today. Okay, so you should see me in the bottom corner, and you should also see a set of slides. Excellent. All right, we will get right into it. Thank you so much, Nancy, for that warm welcome. And thank you for asking Nora to be with you today. Happy almost Rare Disease Day, everybody. Rare Disease Day is coming up on Saturday, February 28th, 2026. And today's program is a part of our Rare Disease Day programming, which we tend to have events kind of scattered throughout the month, leading all the way up to the final day of February. My name is Carolyn Sheridan. I am your Associate Director of State Policy at the National Organization for Rare Disorders. And thank you for spending your lunch with me. What I'm going to be doing is walking you through NORD, state policy at NORD. I'll talk about, oh, something just happened. Lost my, I just got somebody else's screen here. Yes. Okay, you should all see the slides again. Okay, so I'm going to walk through some foundational primers on state policy itself, and then we'll dive into how NORD navigates this space, how we work on it, how we keep track of everything, and I'm going to give you all a little bit of like really good state policy 101 level information to get an understanding of why this space is so critical for rare disease patients. To give a little bit of a, just a quick start, we did see there were questions submitted ahead of time, and somebody asked, what is NORD? Great question. NORD is the National Organization for Rare Disorders. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to improve the health and well-being of people with rare diseases by driving advances in care, research, and policy. NORD is 41 years old. We are a national level nonprofit that was created out of the coalition of parents and patients and other loved ones and stakeholders through the creation of the Orphan Drug Act, which lays out a set of incentives for drug developers to research and create more therapies for rare disease medications. It is within that piece of federal level legislation that rare disease is defined, which is any condition that is prevalent within 200,000 or fewer individuals. So NORD was created 41 years ago as an umbrella organization to serve all people with any of the over 10,000 known rare diseases, and we act as a unifying body. In the last 12 years, NORD has approached state level work with a little bit more intention, and it has led to the creation of a number of programs that we'll talk about today. Before we get too deep in, though, to kind of give a foundation of state policy as a field and its authorities and how it exists in the first place. State level policy work has increased in its visibility and its hype in the last couple of years, for sure. A lot of people are getting drawn to the space, which I think is so exciting. But this policy arena is actually older than the US Constitution. It's older than our current federal government. And that is because during the American Revolution, when states were united, were not united under the one federal government yet, we were running under the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. and it was states really running the show at that time. The approach was reconsidered, and there were efforts made to create a unified central government. And that's when you started to hear arguments between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So the arguments of the Anti-Federalists could not stay the creation of a unified central government under the US Constitution, but those arguments were the creation of our Bill of Rights, including the 10th Amendment, which states that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So this language is really critical. It provides the foundation of authority for states' rights. And it lays the foundation of the basis for many of the powers in healthcare that states have that are laid out for you here. The federal government's powers, federal work, is enumerated in the Constitution: national defense, currency, interstate commerce, and foreign affairs. The states have control of pretty much everything and anything else. They're dealing with health and safety and welfare, education and licensing, insurance regulation. And if the Constitution doesn't lay it out, then the states take care of it. How this looks in real life and for us as patients is our states have a lot of control over critical areas of our patient day-to-day experience. States are controlling Medicaid programs. They're regulating a good portion of state-regulated health insurance plans, so determining what your coverage is like. They're administering and running newborn screening programs. They're dealing with prescription drug pricing and pharmacy networks. They're also a really key player in the provider licensing network. Doctors are licensed by state. They're not licensed federally. So that controls your scope of practice, that controls your access to out-of-state specialists. So there's a lot that they can do. They can do almost everything and anything, but that also means that there's a lot of room for creativity and innovation, which really makes the state policy space really fun to be in. To give a little bit of a state policy 101, these are the things that you really need to know about state governments to have a really good understanding of how to interact with them and what they're actually facing. The number one thing for state policy people to know is that every state is different. There are 50 different versions, 50 different templates to do this policy work. They all have a similar structure, but they each do it in their own way. And what works in one state may not work as well in another state. So you have to be able to pivot. But that's part of the fun. First, state sessions. This is the time of the year when your lawmakers are actually actively at the Capitol, writing bills and passing bills and dealing with bills. This is seasonal. They're not doing this all year round. In the majority of states, they are only meeting from January through June. If you miss a deadline in that time period to introduce a bill or for a certain movement, like to pass a committee at a certain time, that is a critical missed deadline, and you will miss that window to try again for maybe 1 or 2 years from now. So it's really important to pay attention to that. Another thing that's really different and important in state work, only 10 states have legislators that are working full time. The rest of the legislatures across the country in our states are part-time. Lawmakers have other full-time jobs, and they rarely, if ever, have staff to support them. There are also some that don't even meet every year. So those two facts are very important to keep track of. The third one, the largest difference between states and our feds, is that the states cannot run a budget deficit. Their budgets must be balanced. That means that every new program that is created competes directly with existing spending. And the only ways to increase revenue for states is through new taxes, largely, or other revenue raisers, or maybe there's a litigation that they won. But states must have a balanced budget. Governors set the agenda. In the federal policy realm, the president does have a good deal of authority. However, in the state level of government, you hear a little bit more influence coming from governors. This is largely because most state budgets flow from the executive. They put out the budget proposal first, and everything is negotiated based on the governor's proposal. Governors also have varying degrees of veto power and executive order authority. So it's very often that your advocacy is going to have to go beyond just the legislature to include the governor or the executive. And the next piece that's important to know, committee chairs as your gatekeepers. Where it all happens in state government, where the rubber meets the road, where the bills are being changed and being talked about, is happening in the committees. And each committee is led by a specific lawmaker, the chair of that committee. That chair sets the agenda. That chair determines what bills are going to be talked about and which bills are not going to be talked about. A single chair can kill a bill, which means it will die or it won't go any further in the process just by never giving it its day on the agenda or never giving it a hearing. So you need to have good, positive relationships with the chairs of the committee that are relevant to your life. In most cases, that's going to be your health committee chairs. And then finally, the key portion for state level work is to remember that agencies write the rules. After a bill is signed into law, that is not the end of the lawmaking and the policy process. State agencies then interpret that law and create the day-to-day rules and regulations that actually dictate how that law is going to be carried out in practice. And that is through a formal process called the rulemaking process. So, as I said before, there's a lot of room for creativity and innovation within this framework. Every state is doing these things, but they're all doing it in their own ways. There is a phrase out of the state policy community that we all like to, a term of endearment for our states, and that is that our states are laboratories of democracy. And I think this is what makes state policy and rare disease really kind of inherently linked. There's this shared imperative of innovation. And our community really depends on innovation, right? We're all waiting with bated breath for the latest therapy for our condition. We're waiting for new diagnostic approaches and breakthrough care models because only 5% of us have a therapy in the first place. We have seen some pretty cool pieces of legislation come out of state governments over time. Women's voting rights originated out of the state of Wyoming. Minimum wage laws, that came out of Massachusetts. And so did the ACA or Obamacare. All of these were policies that started at the state level and then took on a federal level life. So state level work is where the innovation happens. And that is why for over 12 years, NORD has really dedicated our time and space energy to this space. And we do that largely through 3 programs. NORD's Rare Action Network, which Jake is going to talk about, that is 12 years old now, and we have 32 ambassadors who each represent a state. And they are trained advocates ready to mobilize. They host events. They are there at the state house and they have existing relationships with their lawmakers. In state level work, this is important. You are extremely important. State lawmakers want to hear directly from their constituents. They want to hear from people who live in their state. I do have value coming in from NORD as a national level presence, but my work is only ever enhanced and more effective when I can bring constituents along with me. The other program we have is the NORD State Report Card. It is now on its 11th edition, and that is tracking 9 policy areas across all 50 states plus Washington, D.C. And you can check that out, and I will share that link with you a little bit further in. And then our Project RDAC initiative. Nancy mentioned Rare Disease Advisory Councils, or RDACs. These are embedded advisory bodies within 33 states right now, and they act as a convener. They act as a rare disease advising body. Usually, the majority of them are actually housed within departments of health as well. And this is a great foot in the door to start to build your rare disease relationships on the state level because those are public bodies. You can attend a rare disease advisory council meeting for your state and you can give testimony to them. You can speak with them and get to know these people and they will help you. The programs, these three programs are surrounded by NORD's broader ecosystem. That's how I kind of think about it. We have our member organizations, over 350 of them, with each, they have a disease specific reach. So TMA, for example, is one of NORD's member organizations. We have Students for Rare program, which kind of trains the next generation. These are college level and high school level programs. They're like clubs at schools for students to participate in. We also have our Centers of Excellence Network, which is a network of accredited hospitals and clinicians that really provide that clinical expertise. Then our patient services program, NORD's Origin program. This is our direct funding assistance for patients. And they really kind of give us a good feet on the ground or boots on the ground look of what's happening in states. What are the people who are calling in really needing the most help with day to day? And then we have the Living Rare study, which is the first ever longitudinal study about the rare disease quality of life experience. I think we have all, I think policymakers alike, we have all come to realize that the impact to life and health is not just what happens in your doctor's office and what's happening with your physical health. There are things that are happening in your outside of life too, your social determinants of health. And those are things that we can improve to help create a better overall experience for life as well. And the Living Rare study is seeking to get data on rare disease patient quality of life over time. So this infrastructure is what allows us as NORD to move quickly when opportunities arise in the states. There are thousands of bills that are introduced in state legislatures each year, and not everything is always relevant to us. So we do need to find a way to decide where to focus our limited resources. And that is another really important portion of state work. You're not going to be able to capture everything all the time. So you need to really identify maybe 2 to 3 issues that you really care about to focus your time on. And if you have a win, even if it's the smallest win, celebrate it because it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. This is the framework that we use at NORD to help us sort through the thousands of bills moving through all 50 states and DC. At the base level, we have a monitoring level. We're tracking bills that are worth being aware of, but they may not require any action yet. These things help capture kind of trends in the state policy space, or they're bills that are related to rare sort of, but not yet, and they could be directly related to rare if there's an amendment that happens, right? If language changes in some way. The next level is our analyze category. Our goal here is to have our eyes and ears on any bill that follows into this category and to be able to provide a neutral fact-based analysis of what this bill is doing. Bills related to our state report card typically start at this level and only go up from there. Our advocate level, many of you might have already been involved with this advocate level. This is when we have, as NORD, taken a position on a bill. We are either in support or we are in opposition of something. And that means that we have wrote a memo indicating that position. We have reached out to people that live in the state, because remember, constituents are really important here. And we have asked our advocates to take action with an action alert. We might also be coordinating with some of our coalition partners. And this level is just stopping short of me or a colleague getting on a plane and actually going to your state capitol and talking with lawmakers ourselves. That final level, where I am getting on the plane and taking the trip, that is our engagement level. This is our highest level of investment. And this means that we are actively lobbying, making phone calls to lawmakers, trying to get their votes. We're whipping votes. We're drafting bill language if we have to. We're meeting with agencies. We are in the room as it's happening as much as we can to make sure that we can have a rare disease impact on what's happening. As you move from left to right, the Nord investment level increases. We can't be engage on everything. So we do have to be with strategic with how we do this. So how do we decide what is moving between these areas? Our state report card is really our guiding light here. Bills in these 9 issue areas, which we have graded and tracked over a period of 11 years now, are automatically put into that second level. We're automatically analyzing these, and they are automatically candidates for further engagement or advocating. And those areas are related to Medicaid financial eligibility, medical nutrition coverage, newborn screening or RUSP alignment, rare disease advisory councils. Our telehealth issue is actually measuring the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact, which is a cross-state agreement to make it easier for providers to practice in states they don't live. We also have step therapy. We keep track of prescription drug out-of-pocket costs, bills. We are tracking Medicaid Section 1115 waivers, which are kind of like permission slips for states to try things with their Medicaid programs that they may not be able to do without that extra permission from the federal government. And then finally, we look at short-term limited duration health plans or junk insurance plans. And we keep track of those because they are actually not subject to the requirements of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, and they can actually exclude people based on pre-existing conditions. And we do not like that. On here, we are also kind of starting to keep track of some of the emerging issue areas, and that includes prior authorization. There's a lot of moves across states to try to start to put some guardrails around prior authorization and what insurance plans are asking patients to jump through to be able to get their medications and treatments. We're keeping an eye on biomarker coverage. And then there's a new emerging policy that I call network access, which originated out of the state of Minnesota, which effectively eliminates the concept of out-of-network care for a rare disease patient and a patient who is yet to be diagnosed. So that could be really cool and worth keeping an eye on. The 11th edition of the state report card was published, went live on our website in early January. We publish it every year in January to align with when state sessions start for the year. We just launched it officially with a public-facing announcement just last week. And I encourage you to take a look at that, dive into the website, spend some time exploring it, and spend some time checking out to see what is going on in your state and how your state stacks up. And then reach out to us to see, how you can get further involved. Coming into my end portion here, a lot of what I've talked about has been state policy work on the legislative level. So the work that is happening by your senators and your representatives or your delegates in the state house. But not all policy work happens through legislation. So on the left side, you see legislative work, what you are probably more familiar with. You have bills that are being introduced, you have hearings with votes, the governor signs something, and that's happening in your state capital with your elected representatives, delegates, or senators. On the right-hand side is regulatory work. And this is really about how state laws actually get implemented. And this really directly affects all of our communities. So every state has agencies that run health programs. Your Department of Health might administer the newborn screening program, for example. Your Department of Insurance sets rules for health plans that are sold in your state. And your Medicaid agency, it might be called Health and Human Services or Social Services, depending on where you live, decides who qualifies for Medicaid, what gets covered, and how. Through regulations, states have a lot of discretion in how they design these programs. They can define exemptions to things, they administer the benefits. That means the same state law can look really different depending on where you live. That means the same federal law can look really different depending on where you live. Um, But that discretion, and as we talked about, the creativity and the innovation that is possible on the state level creates a lot of opportunity for state level advocacy work to really move the needle and make a difference. I am very excited that NORD is officially expanding or evolving our operations to be able to do work that is dedicated in the state regulatory space solely. And we had a new person start on staff at the end of December. Um, and what we are going to be doing in that work is we are going to really be focusing on how states are going to be responding to the signing of HR 1 or the One Big Beautiful Bill. There are work requirements that states are now mandated to implement. There's a lot of changes that are restricting the revenue streams that states have available. And as we talked about, state budgets must be balanced. So there's going to be a lot of cuts coming down the line. There's going to be a lot of new tax increases so that states can adjust to all of those changes. So what NORD is going to be doing is we're going to focus on engaging with the state agencies because they implement these things as they develop the waivers or the permission slips that they need, the rules and the regulations and the guidance to actually carry out all of that, making sure that rare disease patient perspectives are reflected before the policies actually go and get finalized. So we'll be writing public comments, but we'll also try to really be doing a lot of good early education and relationship building. In the policy world, your relationships are your gold. It's really better if you can make an introduction with your state lawmaker before you need something from them, so that when you do come to them, you are not just an unknown figure asking for something, but you have an existing relationship there. There are people behind these policies on both sides, and getting to know the person behind the policy is really what can help you out most. So Nord has, good years of experience in this world, and we're now going to bring that experience to the state level. And I'm really excited to be part of it and leading a really great team that we're building out here. And I'm really hoping that I can add all of you to my team. As you know, we are alone, we are rare, but together we are strong, and we need your voice to help that. And I'm going to toss it over to my colleague Jake to give you a little bit more information on exactly how you can help me out.
And
Awesome.
Caroline, I'm going to say thank you as you're doing a transition. There's so much that we, as with Jake, especially with rare disease, that the questions that come up on insurance, on equipment, all of the things that you talked about with policy that are so important to us living with rare diseases. So, Jake, I'm excited to hear how we can help, especially on Rare Disease Day. Thank you, Carolyn, and I'm sure we'll be back in touch. We'll talk again later.
Fantastic. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for sharing all that you had to share regarding state policy during Rare Disease Day. And Nancy and the rest of the Affinity group on the call, thank you guys so much for having me today and sharing some time to carve out how you guys can get involved with some of NORD's advocacy opportunities in 2026. So, to get started, the first step in getting involved with grassroots advocacy with the National Organization for Rare Disorders It's by signing up for the Rare Action Network. Our Rare Action Network is our coalition of 21,000 advocates with representation from all 50 states. And their main focus is to educate on critical issues impacting the rare disease community to ensure that we have our grassroots ready to be mobilized to make an impact, as well as advocating and story sharing through legislative meetings, our digital action alerts, our listening sessions, and the various research that we support. I want to take this opportunity to ask you guys to sign up for the Rare Action Network using the QR code on the screen. Because in 2026, we'll be constantly sharing educational opportunities with the Rare Action Network with a focus on virtual education through webinars paired with one-pagers on key policy issue areas that significantly impact the rare disease community. We'll also share talking points that will equip you with the tools needed to have an effective meeting with your elected official. Our approach to education and mobilization is designed to ensure accessibility for the greatest number of advocates. We recognize that for the most part, advocacy happens where you live, work, and play. You may have a special opportunity to go to your own state house or maybe Capitol Hill, but those opportunities can be very challenging for a majority of our community members. So, the way NORD approaches advocacy is by prioritizing, providing a accessible program that meets you where you're at. So, what I'll end up doing is begin to walk us through all the ways that you can expect NORD to provide education, advocacy, and engagement opportunities throughout 2026. So to talk a little bit about the different types of education we provide in-person, virtual, and written methods. In 2026, we'll be hosting in-person lobby days and advocacy training workshops. Locations for these events are strategically selected based on states where we have a coalition advocating on a bill. Currently, we have lobby days in both Albany, New York, and Montpelier, Vermont scheduled for this month, and I will share those dates in a later slide. We also provide education virtually through advocacy training workshops, monthly webinars, and community conversations. Monthly webinars like the one Nord had last week for the rollout of our 11th state report card will continue to center around particular policy topics or themes. Community conversations are virtual meetings where a panel of rare disease community members share their own stories and tips for navigating challenges that are commonly experienced by rare disease patients, caregivers, and families. We'll be hosting 4 community conversations throughout 2026. Last but not least, we provide education through written materials like issue one-pagers, white papers, blogs, infographics, and talking points for legislative meetings. So current educational opportunities that NORD has on our website, rarediseases.org, is our white paper, Preserving Public Trust in the U.S. Newborn Screening System, where our policy team outlines the importance of our federal U.S. newborn screening system. We also have white papers regarding the Rare Pediatric Disease Priority Review Voucher Program. And then lastly, one of our most current educational opportunities is the 11th edition of the Nord State Report Card, which you can see pictured on the right side of the slide. For upcoming opportunities, we're going to have our March Rare Action Network webinar, which will be all about Medicaid. The date is still to be determined, but we anticipate this happening around mid-March. And by signing up for the Rare Action Network, like I mentioned in the beginning, you'll receive notifications about when those dates are all finalized. NORD will also be hosting a Rare Disease Day congressional briefing, which will be happening on 2/24 at 9:30 a.m. on Capitol Hill. There you will learn about the rare disease policy landscape for 2026. Lastly, the NIH will be hosting a hybrid Rare Disease Day event on Friday, February 27th at 9 a.m. This will be in person and virtual, and NORD will be having a table at the in-person event at the NIH's main conference center, but you can also register virtually. So, on this slide, we've outlined all the ways that you can expect to be engaged by NORD in 2026. So, if you were part of one of NORD's coalitions, you'll expect to be engaged virtually. And we have coalitions in states where we're working on advocates on a specific bill. Currently, we have two coalitions, one's in New York and one's in Vermont. Another activation that we do are our lobby days. As mentioned a little bit earlier, we're hosting lobby days in Albany, New York, as well as Montpelier, Vermont. And these opportunities are only in person, mainly because we're, having in person and Carolyn's scheduling in-person meetings with your lawmakers, so that you can, formulate those relationships and advocate, for the specific asks that we have for the day. We also host legislative meetings. These are both in person and virtual, and these are more of foundational meetings where it's a little bit of informal discourse about why your rare disease is affecting you. But in that same breath, NORD will help you get involved with these meetings, whether that's in person or virtual. Our action alerts are only offered virtually. If you'd like to take action, you can go to rarediseases.org/take action, and you can learn more about all of the federal and state action alerts that we have live right now. I'll also touch them on a later slide. Another activation that we do is our listening sessions. Our listening sessions are both in person and virtual, and you'll receive updates about those dates via our Rare Action Network. And then lastly, our last activations that we do is our sharing your story. And the ways that we do that is through in-person speaking opportunities or through social media story sharing campaigns. And then lastly, we do a little bit of written outreach to lawmakers where we'll provide you with templates to get in contact with your lawmakers. So, engagement opportunities. Fortunately for you all, this is February's is the month for Rare Disease Day. And so there's a lot of really great engagement opportunities throughout this month. Specifically, if you want to get involved with Rare Disease Day initiatives that NORD supports, please visit rarediseaseday.us. And essentially what Rare Disease Day is it's the global initiative to raise awareness and generate support for everyone who's impacted by rare diseases. And like I said, you can learn more at rarediseaseday.us. But on there, you'll find templates for our various campaigns, such as our Faces of Rare campaign, our Show Your Stripes campaign, our Light Up for Rare campaigns, and many other different types of campaigns that we offer. Other types of engagement opportunities that you can, get involved with immediately are action alerts. We have 3 federal action alerts live right now. One of them is the Support the Access to Genetic Counselor Services Act. The second one is our Support the Medical Foods and Formulas Access Act. And then our last federal action alert is Support our federal newborn screening system. We also have 3 state-specific action alerts. One of them being to codify New York's Rare Disease Advisory Council into law. Another action alert that we have is one in Virginia for transparency and affordability in health insurance. And then lastly, we have a West Virginia action alert that's asking them to strengthen and not to repeal West Virginia's Rare Disease Advisory Council. Outside of the action alerts, we also have a story sharing campaign that we're working on going into the month of March, where we're gonna highlight people's stories who, utilize genetic counseling services. And so if you have a story specifically about, a genetic counselor who you hold dear to your heart, please email stories at rarediseases.org if you'd like to share that story related to the Genetic Counseling Services Act. And then lastly, another current opportunity that you can get involved with, Carolyn touched upon it a little bit in her presentation, but the Living Rare study. The Living Rare study is a disease agnostic IRB approved research study that is hosted on Nord's I Am Rare platform. Participation in this study is fully online, and through this research, we collect patient experience data to navigate about navigating life with a rare disease. And this data is used to directly fuel our collective advocacy efforts going forward. Some engagement opportunities on the horizon is Nord's volunteer info session, which happens on the last Thursday of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you'd like to join, it'll be happening this month on 2/26. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 upcoming lobby days. So for any Vermonters or New Yorkers on the call, we're having a Vermont lobby day on 2/19, and we're having in Montpelier, Vermont, and then we're having a New York lobby day in Albany, New York on 2/24. Um, and thank you so much.
Okay, Jake, you're making this short, sweet, and quick. So, um, let me get back to sharing my screen, and then I want to tell you a little bit, both of you. We have lots of time, so tell both of you what TMA is doing for rare disease. Whoops, where am I, folks? Sharing. Okay, guys, here we go. So what TMA is doing for our Rare Disease Day? Okay, here we go, Jake. Questions and answers. We're going to talk about this, then we'll go into question and answers. So, I as what this is from TMA, and some of you, the group leaders, were on Rachel's call a few days ago, and these are some of the slides that they shared. One of the things that they're doing, as you see, is setting up a scholarship fund through Rare Disease Week to donate so that people are able to go to the conference in September. And of course, here we are today, Rare Disease Day, what's happening, um, and how to help. But what we as part of TMA will be, or some people from TMA will be at the FDA Rare Disease Public Meeting, which is on February 23rd from 9 to 4 p.m. Is that, and I know there's a virtual segment. Is Carolyn, or Jake, is the virtual the same day, or is it being recorded and after for the FDA program? Do either of you know?
I believe for the FDA program, I think it's just a live session, and oftentimes they do post the recordings afterwards. And if
Okay.
they do, we'll make sure to share that with our community as well.
Okay, great. I know when we registered. And then the Every Life Foundation is doing some things in Washington for those of you that are in the DC area for February 24th through 26th. And some of the people from TMA will be there. Then we have NIH. Um, the NIH Rare Disease Day, which did not take place last year, but is going to be there this year. And that is both in person and virtual. So that's on February 27th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, now let's get back to questions and answers. Let's see what we have. Do we have any more, whoops, questions from TMA? Um, I know we've got questions on insurance, and I see Carolyn putting your information in for the Vermont days that you guys can have Vermont Rare Disease Day and the New York Day. Um, and oh, thank you, Martha. I know there is a link, but I didn't know if the FDA meeting will be live online or not. So the link is in here. Um, Hopefully we will get the Zoom up earlier than the first of next month for somebody that I can have. Um, Let me go through this with the questions. So I'm going to get back to a couple of things. Just to summarize, Carolyn, what would you say the three most important topics are this year that we as patients that NORD is advocating for issues?
The three most important in states, I would say HR1 implementation is number one. States have to be ready to go with those by January 2027. So this is a
Okay.
year of a lot of activity. Number two, I think there's a really, really strong push for some prior authorization reform in many states, and that's an issue that a lot of folks are keeping an eye on. And third, I would say the third one, probably for NORD, is, the work with rare disease advisory councils, creating some new ones as well as preserving or reforming existing ones. We have already seen, actually, we have one under threat in West Virginia right now. So it is definitely my priority to see that council not eliminated, but instead reformed.
So let me ask one more question. With HR1,
Mhm.
how can you discuss when it goes down to the state level, simply it's going to affect our prescriptions, it's going to affect our insurance, correct? Medicaid, Medicare, majority of us, myositis, unfortunately, majority of us is more of an adult onset than juvenile. But what would you say the biggest impact from HR1 when it gets to a state level will be for the rare disease community?
I think the biggest impact from HR1 that will impact rare disease patients is going to be the implementation of work requirements. They're going to create a huge barrier to access to care for patients and creates a very significant administrative burden on state governments. Not only do they have to do all that's necessary to make the work requirements happen, they have to build the infrastructure behind the scenes to actually do the work, which does not exist in many states right now because states didn't have to do work requirements.
So
Um,
will the rare disease population, how will the rare disease population be affected by HR1 and the work?
We are
Where
probably
do
going to
we have to,
see,
what do we have to look for?
we have to look for individuals who are losing access to health insurance coverage because they don't meet the standard definition of being disabled.
Okay. And Jake, let's talk a little bit more. We talk about we're gonna how important our stories are, how important our letters are, how important it is for us to be out there.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Nancy. In my personal opinion, I think the stories, and I think this is a mutual belief among, our policy team as well as the lawmakers who we have the meetings with. I think the stories are the most impactful portion of all of the advocacy efforts that, take place, whether it's, whether we're, redlining a bill or, doing all the types of appropriations work that, Carolyn and her team does, all of that's very important. But you know, having an understanding of the grassroots perspective is what ultimately helps change that lawmaker's vote from a nay to a yay. And so I think that if anybody, has a, very impactful story, I think everybody's story is extremely impactful, but I encourage you all to, share your story, with us at stories@rarediseases.org. Because we're constantly doing, story sharing campaigns where, we give you guys opportunities to, amplify your voice on social media, or through, the various other forms of advocacy that Nord participates in. So I love story sharing. I love meeting with advocates. And so if any of you guys, I dropped my email in the chat. So if any of you would like to connect and share your story with me, I'm more than happy. More than happy to keep.
That's great. Now I'm gonna ask Rich. We have our board chair on the line today. May I, Rich, would you like to come on? I'm going to introduce Rick Dion. I can never pronounce your last name, Rich. I am so sorry.
Nobody can. Don't worry
Augustine.
about it.
And I know that Rich is, this is Rich's first year as chair of the board, but we're honored to have him on here. And having done this, and I know advocacy is rare, it's dear to his heart. Rich, you mentioned in the chat that you and Paula, who unfortunately couldn't be on with us today, are going to be in Washington next week representing TMA. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and talk a little bit about your thoughts on what Jake and Carolyn have shared with us?
Glad to do that, Nancy. Thank you for your kind words. First of all, I'm just really, really glad and thankful, Carolyn, that you and Jake are joining us today and talking about this. Um, Advocacy is an area where TMA and TMA's community has been involved before, active before, but we haven't made it a major priority. And it is, as Nancy points out, it is very near and dear to my heart. This is not the first rare disease organization I've been involved in. I used to serve on the board of the Mesothelioma Foundation, the rare cancer that I lost my first wife to. And when I'm up in DC next week, this will probably be, I think, my sixth or seventh time walking the halls of Congress and engaging members of Congress and their staff members on behalf of various organizations and interests, not just patient advocacy organizations, but foundations and otherwise that are trying to drive change in this space. One of the things I wanted to take a moment, and Nancy, I appreciate you giving me the time and space to do this. Um, it's always helpful to hear a success story. This time last year, I had the opportunity to work with I think it's the Goldwater Foundation that is behind the Right to Try legislation. And Right to Try 2.0, as it's called, is really about personalized or individualized treatments. Many of you, or many of us in the TMA community, the myositis community, are familiar with this because we're starting to see personalized treatments, for example, like um, CAR T cell treatment, uh, evaluated in the context of dermatomyositis and hopefully someday IBM as well. Um, those are personalized treatments. Those are very unique treatments. And the right to try individualized treatments legislation, I actually testified in front of the House and Senate health committees here in the state of Georgia this time last year. That legislation passed unanimously out of both houses, and is now the law in the state of Georgia. What that means is rare disease patients don't have, when they've gone through the standard of care for their rare disease, whether it's a cancer or otherwise, and they're looking for other options, they now have a path forward to work with a wide range of organizations, their doctors, et cetera, to explore investigational and exploratory treatments as long as those treatments have gone through a phase 1 clinical trial. They don't necessarily have to run the full gauntlet through phase 3 to get FDA approval for rare disease patients to have access to them. So that's something I'm passionate about. And that's something that, I'll be candid, I probably spent a sum total of 10 to 12 hours on this time last year. And this is, if any of you have ever been to a concert or a football game or a baseball game, maybe you've heard people singing Sweet Caroline, or you've been to a church service and heard a large church service and heard people singing at once. That's really what advocacy is about. When we as a community band together and all share our voices and all reach out, email, text, live conversations, going to Washington, D.C. if we can, et cetera, and advocate on behalf of all the members of our community. When you band all those voices together, they are loud and they are impactful. That's what's happening next week in DC. I'm glad for myself and Paula to be two of those voices. I know Paula's got a lot going on personally right now with her parents, but I know she is going to be there next week. She'll be at the Monday and Friday meetings, FDA and NIH. I'll be there Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and participating in the rare disease week activities up there on behalf of TMA. So,
And Rich, yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. And being in the Hill and doing that's very, very important. But we, and as TMA, and that's why I asked Carolyn and very quickly, we need to show our voices. As much happens in the state as it does federally now, and if we can't be on the Hill in Washington, we need to be at our state capitals. We need to watch our state capitals. We need to watch all of our state committees. And that's what today is really so much about, in conjunction with what you guys are doing. Because I know, like you, Rich, I testified a couple of weeks ago on a bill in Maryland, and watching a bill go from questionable to positive. And this was something on physical therapy for those of you with IBM that's important for us, since physical therapy is our medicine. So, it was exciting to know it's positive, but we need to, and Carolyn and I are both there, so much more of the policy is also happening in our states. So we need to watch those state report cards. We need to see what bills are going on for insurance. We need to see what we're doing for drugs. And we need to that's going to raise awareness for myositis. It's going to help us with more money for NIH. It's our voices. It's a unified voice. So, Rich, do you have any more comments from what I just said, sir?
Two comments only. One, it is just important. It's just as important for us to be active and focused in terms of sharing our voice at a state level for sure. Um, I'm presently slowly getting involved with the Georgia RDAC, Rare Disease Advisory Council. I'll be candid. It's new. It is massively underperforming here in the state of Georgia. Expectations are high and execution is low. And that's unfortunate, but it's something I'm going to be putting some more time and energy into in the coming years. But I encourage all of you to look at NORD's resources. Again, thanks to Carolyn and Jake for being here today. Make this a priority. If you've got the time and the energy to do it, to speak on behalf of the community, on behalf of yourself, and to tell your story, I'm just telling you, it will be effective, and you can drive change. Thanks, Nancy.
So with that, I'm going to say thank you to Carolyn and Jake, and say, yeah, you know, we're here. Thank you for helping us to make our story heard. Um, and thank everybody that's been here today talking about it. If Allie is still on, thank you, Allie Ward. Thank you, Nord. Uh, Carolyn, Jake, you know that I am on your calls. And by the way, your state report card meeting was spectacular.
Thank you.
So it was, there is so much information on there. I can't wait to get in and really dig and find out what's really going on there individually. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about um, the Women with IBM's next programs. March 17th, we're going to be back to grassroots, guys. We're going to talk just on networking, talk about our day-to-day lives, what's happening with them. Sharon McCall is going to be leading some of that as we go forward. And April 14th and April 19th, we have two more spectacular programs and meetings that are um that I'm very excited about. I don't know about you, but anyone that has a swallowing problem or has had one as we're living with IBM, we're going to have a swallowing symposium or a swallowing seminar. April 14th, we're going to talk about living with swallowing problems, how we get through our day-to-day lives, how we deal with social issues with swallowing. We have two speech therapists from Johns Hopkins Myositis Center who deal with this, with myositis patients day to day, that are going to be leading a group of people and talking about how we live with it day to day. May 19th, we're going to talk again more about swallowing, what it is, but what treatments and what research there is for this. So other than dealing with our speech therapists, we have two, I can't pronounce it, otolaryngologists or ENT physicians, one from Johns Hopkins and one from University of Texas, Austin, who specialize in swallowing and deal with IBM patients. Both of these physicians are involved with treatments and in research of what can be done to make our lives easier. So look forward to that. If anyone is interested in being on a panel for that, I will send out in the next few weeks some calls to action for those programs. And with that, oh, here we are. We are done early, folks. Um, we're going to say, and yet we thrive. IBM places significant demands on us. We can't deny the impact of IBM, but we can continue to develop strategies to enhance our ability to thrive, as we learned today. To paraphrase Maya Angelou's statement, we are changed by what happens to us due to IBM, but we are determined we won't be reduced by it. So with that, I'm going to give a huge shout out for the Women with IBM team, Sharon Kerr McCall, Laura Richardson, but also a huge shout out for everyone who was with us today and say thank you for joining us. So let's give everybody a hand and we will see you next month.